We lost one of the greatest, if not the greatest, mind of our generation. Stephen Hawking, scientific hero and icon, died at 76. Stephen Hawking was born on the anniversary of Galileo's death and died on Einstein's birthday. Weird coincidences. Like these luminaries, his legacy is immense. So I'm simply too dumb to comprehend and describe his contribution to scientific knowledge. So let me tell you how Vox explains it. They say, as a scientist, Hawking is most famous for proposing a form of radiation that bears his name, Hawking radiation, which helps explain how black holes function. Black holes are the densest, most violent objects in the universe. Nothing is supposed to escape the grasp of their extreme gravity. Combining insights from Einstein's theory of general relativity with quantum mechanics, two branches of physics that normally don't play nice with each other, Hawking was able to figure out, theoretically, that black holes do lose mass over time. The finding meant that black holes aren't permanent. They, like stars, have a life cycle and eventually die. Hawking adapted this finding into some useful advice for those dealing with depression. Quote, things can get out of a black hole both on the outside and possibly to another universe. So if you feel you're in a black hole, don't give up, there's a way out. For physicists, Hawking radiation opened up a whole new direction of inquiry about the foundations of how gravity and quantum physics interrelate that has yet to reach its final conclusion. Cliff Burgess, a particle physicist at McMaster University in Canada, said, Hawking's findings probed the universe at its extremes. He and fellow physicist Roger Penrose were able to show that Einstein's theory of relativity predicts that singularities exist within black holes, i.e. regions of space where the force of gravity is infinite. And that, if you trace backward the history of the universe, it likely began with a singularity, also known as the Big Bang. And then they go on to say, as a cultural figure, Hawking is most famous for a brief history of time which discusses how the universe came to be, how it might end, and how physicists are still stumped by the big questions that explain it all. It has sold more than 10 million copies and propelled him into superstardom. So his political ideas were also decidedly leftist. So brilliant scientific mind, just honestly functioning on another level, another frequency that regular people like me can't wrap our minds around and comprehend and grasp. I mean, the things that he was able to prove, his grasp of science and math, it's something that's just absolutely mind-boggling. Now, on politics, he was clear, and I want to show you a tweet storm here. Ben Norton did this, and this is really illuminating. He says, Stephen Hawking was also outspoken politically. He warned against capitalism and said, quote, machine-produced wealth should be shared, or most people can end up miserably poor if the machine owners successfully lobby against wealth redistribution. So right off the bat, he's making a clear argument for wealth redistribution. Now, that's a point I've tried to make repeatedly on the show, is that everybody's in favor of wealth redistribution. It's just a matter of where you draw the line. So if you're in favor of having police officers in a fire department, you're in favor of wealth redistribution, because that's exactly what that is. You're taxing people, taking the money, giving it to another group of people to do a job. Now, you could say, oh, okay, that's wealth redistribution, but it's a mild form of it. But you already conceded the original point and bought into the premise that wealth redistribution is actually a very rational thing to do. But then you say, okay, how far should we take this? And, you know, the classic example, which is just insane and shows you how we don't live in a meritocracy, not only in the U.S., but around the world, is that the richest 6 people have more wealth than the bottom 3.5 billion people. So 6 people have more wealth than half the world combined. I mean, that's just... So you know that those 6 people didn't just work harder than everybody else. You know that there's a lot more that goes into it. There's generational wealth that gets passed down to spoiled brat pricks. There's rigged systems. There's nepotism. So there is systemic oppression in many respects, and there is a rigid class structure, not only in the U.S., but around the world. And that has incredibly detrimental effects. Well, Stephen Hawking knew that, and he said, yes, we need to redistribute wealth. And if you don't redistribute wealth in a rational way, this is all going to blow up in our faces and civilization can come to an end. He continues here. Stephen Hawking warned we must take action on climate change immediately. Quote, we are close to the tipping point where global warming becomes irreversible. Climate change is one of the greatest dangers we face, and it's one we can prevent if we act now. Stephen Hawking was also a voice for justice. In 1968, he protested against the murderous Vietnam War. And there you can see a picture of him doing exactly that. Stephen Hawking condemned the illegal US-UK invasion of Iraq, calling it in 2004 a war crime based on lies. Stephen Hawking endorsed the boycott of Israeli apartheid in 2013 in support of Palestinian human rights. Despite a massive backlash and an outrageous smear campaign, he always stood tall for justice. Stephen Hawking was a staunch supporter of socialized medicine. He emphasized, quote, the more profit is extracted from the system, the more private monopolies grow, and the more expensive healthcare becomes. The NHS must be preserved from commercial interests. And then finally here, Ben Norton concludes with a quote from Stephen Hawking. No one created the universe, and no one directs our fate. This leads me to a profound realization. There's probably no heaven and no afterlife either. We have this one life to appreciate the grand design of the universe, and for that, I am extremely grateful. Rest in peace. So, it's a loss. It's a big loss. Now, Stephen Hawking was told by doctors a long time ago, when he was a kid, in fact, that he would only live 2 more years because he has ALS. And clearly, he defied the odds in that respect, too. And he lived to the age of 76. So, an amazing life. Neil deGrasse Tyson pointed out as well, this is an intellectual void that cannot be filled and will not be filled. I mean, of course you have other brilliant people, and there are going to be people who are extraordinary, and the cream always rises to the top, and we're going to see, amazing breakthroughs continue, but this is somebody who really was just so rare, and we should all consider ourselves lucky that we existed on Earth at the same time as him, because the contributions that this guy made, I mean, as has been pointed out, it's right up there with Galileo, with Einstein, and his name will be remembered for generations to come. So yeah, Stephen Hawking, rest in peace. It's very sad that he's gone now, and it really made me stop and pause and go, holy shit, we may have just lost the single most brilliant mind of our generation.